Hi, I'm Brittany.
And I'm Cami.
And this is the Deeply Rooted Homeschool. The heart behind this podcast is to encourage and equip you as you start or continue your homeschool journey. If you are considering homeschooling or are new to homeschooling, we created this podcast with you in mind to answer common questions. If you're just finding us, you'll want to go back and catch up on our past episodes. Thanks for joining us today.
Welcome back to the Deeply Rooted Homeschool. This is actually part 2 of our panel series. If you didn't listen to part 1, you'll want to go back and listen to that. There was so much good stuff in that episode. Recently, we threw out on our social media a fill-in-the-blank question. I would love to homeschool, but how would you finish that sentence? And we got so many responses that we really felt like it was important to answer all of them and to address them each individually. So we actually wrote them down on a marker board and sat around with some of our friends and tackled each topic individually. So we're about to jump back into part 2 of that. It may sound a little different than our normal formatting. You'll probably hear a lot more shuffling around and a lot more background noises, but also a lot more voices of wisdom to speak to you about these topics. So let's jump back into that. Okay, so one of the questions that we get asked a lot is, I need to work, or both of us need to work. How do you homeschool and have 2 working parents? So Melissa, do you have something to say to that?
Yes, I'm Melissa Tyler, and I have 4 children. They're ages 5 to 10, almost 11. And my husband works full-time, your typical 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And then I'm a nurse, so I luckily have a little bit of flexibility in my schedule. But I work 26 hours in clinic a week, and then I take call after hours when the clinic is closed. And I love my job, and I love to homeschool, and we just kind of make it work. Nobody says that you have to homeschool during the day when public school is in session and things are going on. You can homeschool around your own schedule. So Saturdays are a school day for us. We try not to school on Sunday just because we like that to be a day of rest for our family, and that's the time when we attend church and such. But we homeschool on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Our curriculum is actually 5 days, but we just split up what's on that 5th day, and we incorporate it into our 4 other days. And we homeschool early in the mornings. You can homeschool at night. We can take flashcards if we decide to go on a trip on a Saturday and we don't want to homeschool that full day. We'll take flashcards in the car, and we will call out history facts, and we'll review information that way. Or I talked previously about when our kids are in therapy and when we're waiting in waiting rooms, we have frequently pulled up tables and just schooled right there in the waiting room. So you can make it what it needs to be to fit your family. You can also homeschool through the summer, which is something we do as well, mostly when we're trying to, because my children have special needs, when we're trying to, make up some time on a subject or gain some ground in an area where I feel like there's been a gap. Then we will school through the summer some as well. So if you need a shorter homeschool day because you work the first, 8 hours or, 6 hours of Monday through Friday or whatever, and you need to break your homeschool days into shorter portions and then school longer, like do a year-round homeschool, you could do that as well. So just get creative. When your kids are available and you're available, it's a good time to teach.
So what if you are maybe a single parent and you have to work, you don't have another income going on? So does anybody have anything to add to that? Kristen?
Sure. I'm Kristen. I had to homeschool, didn't have to homeschool. Let me rephrase that. I was already homeschooling when I found myself to be a single mom, but my desire was to continue homeschooling. And so kind of like what Melissa said, earlier, sometimes you have to get creative. And there are no hard and fast rules that say you have to do school certain time a day. You don't have to start at 8 o'clock in the morning. It may be you do school in the evenings or on a Saturday or whatever works best for your family. I was fortunate in that I was able to work from home. But when I was working, I had to make sure that my children were cared for, and that a lot of this is going to vary from family to family. It's totally going to depend on your situation, what kind of work you're able to do, whether you're working from home or you need to work outside the home. The ages of your children, that's going to be a huge factor. I had older ones who were able to watch younger ones while I taught music lessons from home. But your situation may look very different than mine. But I would just encourage you just to be creative. Like some have mentioned before, there are a lot of online options. I ended up using some, not necessarily online, but it was on the computer. I ended up switching curriculums during that time because I found myself, I had 6 children in 6 different grades. And I felt slightly overwhelmed with trying to keep up with it all. In particular, just grading math. That seemed to be my biggest hard to keep up with. And so I did a little asking around. I asked some veteran homeschool moms that I knew. I said, hey, I need a little help with math here. What do you recommend? And so they gave me some suggestions. I ended up using teaching textbooks is what I ended up using because it helped me not only with the teaching of the math, but also with the grading as well. And that was something I was running into. I had a couple of kids that would work a whole unit of math before I would get to it to check it. And then all of a sudden I realized, you've done the whole thing wrong. We got to start over, And that's okay. That happens sometimes. But just because I was a single parent and I was stretched kind of thin, sometimes things would fall through the cracks that I might not catch right away. And so like I said, I just sought wisdom. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Seek wisdom. The Lord put so many wonderful mentors in my life over the years, moms who had already done this for several years and had a lot of wisdom. And I knew anytime I needed help, I could call on them and say, hey, what would you recommend? Here's what I'm up against. And I did that as a single mom. I said, hey, I need some help. And they had great suggestions. Learning to be flexible, learning to ask for help, be creative. But it is possible to homeschool even as a single parent. There are just a lot of options there. So don't be afraid to try it. And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Okay, so another question that we seem to get pretty frequently is, I would love to homeschool, but my kids are really involved in sports or want to be involved in sports and extracurricular activities through the school district. Does anyone have anything to contribute to that topic?
Sure. I'm Kristen, and I have had 2 children so far who have participated in extracurricular activities, particularly sports, but I'll speak to that first. When my oldest son was in 7th grade, he really wanted to play football, and we could not find a homeschool football team. That seems to be one of the biggest things that's hard to find, is enough homeschoolers who want to play football. So we looked into a couple of options. There was a guy trying to start a team up. It just wasn't going to happen. And so I said, well, let's just see what the public school offers. So I just contacted our local school district and told them, we homeschool. We plan on continuing that. But my son really wants to play football, and he would like to try basketball too, maybe. And they said, oh, sure, come on up. So, and this was actually before the laws had necessarily changed to make sure that homeschoolers had that opportunity. I know in our state that the laws are very friendly towards that. That varies from state to state, but in ours, we have what's called the Tim Tebow law, which allows homeschoolers to participate in extracurricular activities. And so anyhow, we just let him know that was what we wanted to do, and signed him up, and he started going to practices, and basically he played sports 7th grade all the way through 12th grade. after a few years, he decided football wasn't really his favorite, but he loved basketball. And so he stuck with that, did it all the way through, was a starter on the senior team, got lots of offers from different colleges to go play basketball for them. But another class that he ended up taking, we decided to do a few other electives through the public school. And one of them that he took was called agri-mechanics or agricultural mechanics. And who would have thought that he absolutely loved that sort of thing, but he just really developed a passion for working with his hands, found out that he loves to weld. So he's decided to go to welding school after high school. But we had really good experiences with working with the public schools to participate in extracurricular activities. However, I know that there are some people who don't have the same experience. Sometimes I think it depends on where you live. I think a lot of it depends on your superintendent, just the school district in general. We were just very blessed to be in a school district that was very cooperative. But I would encourage you, if you have a child that's interested in that, to do just a little bit of homework, do a little research, contact your statewide homeschool office, find out what the laws are, what the regulations are. And I would encourage you to do this as far in advance as possible. Don't wait till right before school starts. Try to start as early as you know that they might be interested, even if it's the year before. Because sometimes there are certain things involved. There may be summer practices that they need to participate in. And your child's going to feel really awkward and behind if they don't get to practice the summer with the team. Another thing, and I'm going to let someone else speak to this, but there are also a lot of homeschool sports organizations that we chose not to participate in simply for logistics. For us, it was too far to drive every day to participate in our homeschool sports. And so for us, it was a matter of distance and financial obligation, but we knew that we could use the public school, which was just right down the street from us. So, but I think some others might be able to speak to the homeschool sport organizations.
Okay, so Amy, did you have something to add? I know your kids are involved in homeschool sports organizations.
Yes, so my two oldest, my 12, almost 13-year-old and 11-year-old have both played homeschool basketball. My son is an avid basketball player. And like Kristen, well, we do play in the homeschool league, and he loves it, and we love the coaches. And I've been in other states. I have family in other states, and I know that homeschool organizations exist in lots of states, and ours is obviously just a local one. So there are 4 or 5 other homeschool organizations within the state. So they're just set up sort of in regions. And then my son would like to try public school sports when he's older. Then my daughter has played ball as well, but then she also swims on 2 club swim teams, a rec team and then a more competitive team. So that's her thing. And then when she gets to high school, she will try out for the high school swim team. And we have lots of homeschool friends whose kids already swim on the high school swim team. So this usually, when I've met with parents in the past, it's usually a dad question. They're very concerned if usually their son is going to be able to play sports. And I think the same type of sports that dad has played and maybe granddad, that. But remember, again, I said this before, when you make a decision to homeschool and you're talking about a kindergartner, that's a long-term view, and you never know what's going to happen in that child's life. You never know what's going to happen as far as sports are concerned, homeschool sports, public school sports, all of those things, because, times are changing. So there's always options available for sports.
Okay, another question that we get or concern that we get is, I would love to homeschool, but I don't have the patience to teach this kid or to be around my kids that long or, whatever. So Allison, what do you think about that?
I hear this a lot. I have a lot of friends who will say to me, I don't know how you do it. I don't have that much patience. And I think that almost every one of us in the room would say, we don't have that patience either. It's been something that God has grown in me. We're all a work in progress. There's been ugly moments in our homeschool, moments that I'm ashamed of and that I have to go to God in repentance and go to my children and ask for forgiveness because it did not go the way we want it to. But I would encourage you that you may get to know your child at a whole new level and in a way you never thought, and build a relationship that you never thought. Don't let fear be what keeps you from trying something that maybe God is placing on your heart, because none of us are born with the fruits of the Spirit. They are things that God develops in us over the years, and that includes patience.
That's so good. That's so true. Oh my goodness. The fruits of the Spirit. I learned that along with my kids. I didn't know what they were before. But I learned that along with my kids because teaching my kids, and they needed the patience to deal with me and I needed the patience to deal with them. So that's really good. I love that. But it's the relationship building that happens between you and your child when, you're the one that's having to learn that alongside them. Like that builds your relationship up.
And I think that I would just encourage people, if they're pulling their child out of a public school or a private school setting, that you haven't been able to see the best of your child. You get after you've gone to work all day and you're tired and hungry and exhausted, your child is tired of sitting still and having to pay attention and hungry and exhausted. And you give each other the leftovers of yourselves. And so when you begin to homeschool, you kind of come into a new relationship with your child and you get to see the best parts of your child. And you may not lose your patience quite as much as you think you might, because they may not be quite as overextended, honestly.
I would speak to that too, Cammie, in that a lot of times parents are judging it based on summer vacation. And towards the end of summer vacation, I am ready to start our school year back because it is time for a routine. And so the homeschool parents also feel that same, they're driving me crazy.
Yes.
Tomorrow morning we're getting up and getting our books out and we're on a schedule and you're doing school again. And so it's not going to look like summer vacation all the time, every day.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
That is true. And learning to apologize to your kids, just the lessons that come in that when your kids experience that, getting to forgive you, the parent, and you asking for forgiveness from your kids. I think it's been really powerful for us, something that I never experienced before, but there was so much freedom that came in that. So Allison's talk leads us into another question that we get, which is, what if it puts a strain on my relationship with my child or my children? Who can speak to that?
Well, this is Amy. And I would say that anybody that we are around a lot and are in some form of relationship, there are periods of strain. That's just what relationships are about. If you're married, there are periods of strain. Sometimes it's just an hour or 5 minutes. Sometimes there's longer periods of strain. But, and the same, I think, is with our relationship with the Father. There are times when we are very close and connected. And there are times when we are distant. He's not distancing himself from us, but we do that. Well, that may happen with our children. It will happen with our children, whether we're homeschooling them or if they are being schooled in another way. There will be times of strain. But personally, I would much rather have those times of strain when they're with me and we are dealing with it one-on-one, as opposed to being away from me 6 to 7 hours a day, and they are learning how to deal with strained relationship from people their own age that don't yet have enough knowledge to pour into them and to know how to deal with strain appropriately. So that kind of goes with another one I think we've gotten about, will my kid get tired of me? My kids get tired of me every day. I get tired of my kids every day in some form or fashion. Again, it is a relationship. It is a 5-minute, I'm tired of you. I need you to go to your room and take a break. Or it is I need to walk away and take a short walk. But that, again, I don't think that's a reflection of homeschool. I think it's a reflection of just relationships in general. And again, when my kid gets tired of me, then like Alice Ann said, there are times when we can look about, okay, really what's the cause of your frustration or my frustration? Let's talk about it. Let's apologize. And then we're ready to move on and not away from me for hours on time with thoughts running through their head that are not true.
Right. That's really good, Amy. So another thing that was on our list tonight was when you need to walk away, when you need to carve out time for yourself. How do you do that? People are concerned, especially people that are introverted. Let's just say it. When we're introverts, we are concerned about getting enough time alone and having that time to recharge from our kids. And it can be really hard as a homeschool mom. So, Allison, did you have something to say to that about how do you carve out time for yourself?
Yes, I do. I will start kind of at the beginning. When we started homeschooling, I worked a couple of days a week, and my kids went to preschool a couple of days a week. We had a play date with a friend every now and then. And then when we started homeschooling, I had another baby. I stopped working, and we were just there at the table. And I was like, where's my free time? Where's my money? Where's my gym time? Because I'm now sitting here talking about the alphabet. It felt like all day. It was probably an hour and a half, but it felt like all day. And what God has really grown in me is that death to self, that I don't get the gym time I wanted. I don't get the friend time I wanted. I don't get the book time I wanted, because life is not about me. And not to speak to you, we do need those times to recharge. And I'm definitely not talking about that, but I would go and I would spend 2 hours at the gym 3 or 4 days a week. And that's just not a reality anymore. And so you will have to give up some of the things that you maybe just want to do. But the blessings of knowing my kids, and when I think about my oldest, I'm like, she's got 5 years left in my house. And I take peace in knowing that I have spent those years full on with her, and that I've done everything I can to lead her to the Lord and embrace those years and put those moments first. I've got my whole life to go to the gym and have lunch dates with friends and have shopping money because I worked at a job.
And, this reminds me of a conversation I had with a friend just the other day, where she was almost feeling like she was being selfish for staying at home with her child. Like she quit her job and is ready to stay at home with her child and homeschool her kindergartner. And she felt the pressure from other people that she was being selfish by doing that because she was giving up a lot of things. And I told her, I was like, it's actually, this is the most selfless thing, honestly, because you do have to die to self and you spend your whole day doing things for other people. And I don't want that to sound like it's depressing or like, why would you want to do this? But it is. It's an exercise in dying to self, being a homeschool mom.
And that's not to make anyone feel guilty if it's like, it's been a long day and you hand the kids over to dad and say, I'm going to be in my room and probably am not coming out until the morning time.
Oh, that happens at least once a week at my house. Yes. But it's not because it's so that I can continue to pour out myself into my kids. That's not something that I'm doing just because I want to. It's because it's necessary for me to continue doing the other things.
Well, and I just wanted to add that sometimes, Allison was talking about she gave up gym time and things like that. And I did the same. When they were younger, we'd go to the gym together because we schooled in the drive to the car. On the drive to the gym, and we schooled on the way home from the gym. But then we reached a point where that wasn't enough. They needed more time. And I gave up the gym and, that daily workout for several years and just had to fit in where I could. But now my kids are older, and those things that I enjoyed to do, spending time reading, spending time going to the gym or going on a longer walk, they're older now. They are what we wanted them to be, more independent in their learning. So I can actually leave the older kids for a bit and say, I'm going to do this. I'll be back to check on your work when I return. So yes, we died to self, but I do think that the Lord rewards us in that work. And some of those things that he wants us to have back, we get them back.
Yeah, the season gets easier.
Right.
The seasons change and it gets easier. Okay, so this kind of leads us into the next question, which is I want to homeschool, but I'm in this season where I have babies and toddlers, and then I have an older child that needs school. And what if I don't have enough time to, how do I manage all those things?
This is Melissa, and we have 4 children, and we had them in a matter of 5, almost 6 years. And so we had babies definitely while we were homeschooling. And I worked really hard to try, and I know this doesn't always work perfectly, but I worked really hard to try to get everybody on the same nap schedule if possible, or Baby Einstein is your friend. And when you need those few moments where you just really need to focus on an older sibling, if you put a couple in, if they're old enough, be safe. But if you can put them in the bathtub with some toys and they can splash around while you sit just outside of the bathtub or bathroom and, do math in the hallway. Or if you have a baby that you're needing to feed, you're at home. So breastfeed that baby or bottle feed that baby right as you're sitting at the table and doing spelling lists with the other kids. And if you have older children, mine weren't ever old enough to watch the others really while I was trying to do school. But if you have older children and they are able to, occupy younger ones with, learning ABCs, or even kind of be like co-teaching alongside you while you focus on your middle schooler who's, doing stuff that your older child may not quite be able to teach them, but can occupy the littles and teach them something. Utilize the people in your house, and that makes them feel special and a part of the family and part of the education system.
And something else that it's teaching those older kids is that it's okay to be interrupted, and that life and your other children are more important than your school. Like we're teaching them how to love each other and how to care for each other and take care of others' needs before yourself. And so I think that's really important.
Absolutely.
Okay, so another question that I found really interesting was I want to homeschool, but my family, mostly my family, but sometimes my friends aren't supportive of that decision. So what would you say to somebody who said their family wasn't supportive of homeschooling?
Well, this is Alison, and I said before, all of my family works for the school except for my husband and I. And so when we decided to homeschool, it was like no one was unkind, but I could tell that they thought we were crazy. And I would get lots of questions about, well, what about this? How are you going to keep them up with this? Now, I put an unrealistic set of expectations on myself and my daughter that year, because I had to prove that I could be just as good a teacher and that she could do just as good as my nieces and nephews in everything they did. And that even the friends who said, well, they're going to be missing out on the sports and the socialization, I had to prove that I could do it. And we had a miserable year. At the end of the year, I hated homeschooling. I said I told my husband, I was like, I'm done. Never want to do this again. And that summer I had a just kind of a come to Jesus moment encounter where it was just a surrender to this is what he chose for my life. And that's when I realized we didn't have to do public school at home. I could meet her where she was. We could enjoy learning together, and we have not looked back since then. And so I would encourage you that if this is a call that God has placed on your life, that to walk in it, and whatever journey he has taken you on, to walk it well.
Okay, this is Sam, and I just want to add to Alison's thoughts about your friends and family being supportive. One of the things I've noticed in just all of the aspects of my life, when I choose to do something that's against the mainstream, I kind of feel like the only mechanism people know, defense mechanism they have, is to kind of attack what I'm doing. And I don't really think they care if my kids are socialized or if I follow a doctor's schedule, but they feel like that they take it personally that I'm choosing to do something different than them. And so they, instead of just saying, I'll look into, I'll think about that, or that's something that's interesting, they kind of go on the attack. And I'm not saying that people are mean all the time or anything. I'm just saying that I have picked up on the fact that people get really defensive when you go against the mainstream. They feel like they have to defend themselves. And so don't take it personally when your family and friends aren't supportive. Just kind of try to put yourself in their shoes and just think, I guess this bugs them because it's something different, and they are kind of, maybe they're just insecure about choices they've made, or because they've been presented with something different, they feel like they have to support their decisions. So anyway, I would just say don't take that personally. Just pray about it and know what God has for your life, and that you know and love your children better than anyone else can. So, and your family will see the fruits of your labor. When your kid is graduating high school and they know as much as, or if not more than other children, and they have a great relationship with you because they've been beside you, So good. So anyway, that's what I have to say about that.
And you're the only one that's responsible to stand before God about the choices you made for your child. So it doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks, because He entrusted that child to you, and you have to make those decisions for your child, and no one else matters in that equation.
Well, one of the things that I ask people when they're trying to decide, homeschool, or I'm homeschooling and my kid wants to go back to public school, and they're heartbroken about that. Maybe they're kind of grieving the loss of something, a decision that they're having to make for their kids. And what's your end goal for your kid? I mean, is it success? Is it straight A's? Is it a lot of money when they get older? And of course, those things would help them in their lives, and you would not see them suffer, maybe not, if they had those things. But if we honestly look at what our goal is for our kids, it's that they love God and share that love with other people, and that they love people. And so if my end goal at the end of their life is that they have loved God well and loved people well, then really I cannot spend my life worrying about my friends and family criticizing my decisions, because in the end that just doesn't matter.
Okay, so Sam, I have another question for you. One of the last things up here on our board tonight says, I'm worried about homeschooling because I don't feel like maybe I'm organized enough or have my life together enough. So what would you say to somebody that asked you that?
Well, you are asking the perfect person, because what I would say is, if I can do it, you can. My whole life, or my whole adult life anyway, I have been totally winging it. And I feel like I'm doing an okay job, but I'm just a procrastinator at heart. It just took me a while to own that. And when I knew I wanted to homeschool my kids, I had this plan. I had expectations. We were going to do this curriculum, and we were going to follow this schedule, and it was just going to be amazing. And that was great for 2 weeks. And then we just slid into this disorganization that is typical of me. So that actually happens every year for the first couple of weeks. I think this is going to be great. And then before you know it, we're finishing math at 10 p.m. So, that's just how it goes. But a few weeks ago, Anna was on your podcast, and she said something that really, I just kind of recognized in my own life. She said, you have to know the truth about yourself as a mom. And man, I'm a procrastinator. I'm not going to follow a schedule. You don't know how bad I want to keep up with a planner. They have such cute options. And I mean, I could buy all the fun stuff to put in the planner, and I just picture it being open with this schedule and marking things off the list. But it's not going to happen. It's not. But But I can homeschool. I can still do that. I can't be a list maker and a schedule follower, but I can homeschool. And it's just not going to be something I brag about on social media. I mean, it's embarrassing to say that your kid finishes his math work at 10:30 p.m. So we just do that and move on. But so another thing about this is just because I'm disorganized doesn't mean my kids are. My oldest kid really wants a schedule. I mean, he just wants to mark things off the list and feel like he's done. So we've got a compromise, and he has a chart that he follows every day, and I've laminated a list of everything he has to do, and he keeps up with that, and that satisfies him, and it's flexible for me. So that's worked well for us. So you can do this if you're not organized. You just have to figure out a way to make it work for everybody. And also in Sarah Mackenzie's book, Teaching from Rest, she talks about a loop schedule. And that is what is great for us procrastinators and non-schedule followers. You just make a schedule, but it doesn't have times on it. It doesn't have days on it. It's just when we finish this book, we're going to do this book. When we finish history, we're going to do, art or something. And that's the great thing. We classically educate, and a great thing about that is you mix them all together. So they're integrated subjects, so you don't even have to do specific subjects every day. So one thing I want to make sure I do, I want to encourage moms that aren't organized, but that you can do this, but I don't want to blow it off like, oh, it's fine, they'll learn as they go. I mean, we do our curriculum. We just literally might finish it in August right before we start the next one. We just kind of school year round, week or, all week. We just don't have a schedule, but we do get it done. I do feel like my kids have kept up with other kids their age and in their class setting, their peers. Not that that's always important either. You have that flexibility. They will learn it eventually. But at the end of the day, I feel like it's pretty successful if we've done a read aloud, if they have done individual reading, we've done some math, either math facts or math drills or math lesson, and something from the Bible, they've individual Bible work or Bible discussion with their dad and I at night. So anyway, I just want to let you encourage moms that are not as organized as all the ones we see on Pinterest, and that you can do this. You've got this. You are the one that knows and loves your child better than anyone else. And so you're going to get it done.
Well, you speak to a very good point, that you don't have to have a Pinterest-worthy schoolroom set up. You don't. You can just kind of do school where you are and however you have it. And I think that is some freedom for a lot of people, because we don't have a Pinterest-worthy schoolroom. You kind of do, Amy.
Even if you made one, I see people all the time say, oh, we spent all this money and time creating this room and it looks so pretty in pictures, but we go outside in school, or everybody ends up at the couch.
They all end up at the
kitchen table.
Yep.
And so that's not something you need to worry about. Right?
No.
Perfection.
Well, and honestly, if you make it out to be, I have to look this way, it has to be organized, it has to be structured, it has to look like this, you're going to set yourself up for failure. That's what I did. I thought, oh, I need to be structured. It needs to be at 9 o'clock we do this, and at 9:30 we do this, and at 10 o'clock. I'm not wired that way. I don't like being told what to do, even if I'm telling myself. I don't like that type of structure. So for me, finding the loop schedule was so huge for me, because it was like, we're getting things done. It just looks differently than what I'm seeing over here. And it was so much freedom for us, so much freedom.
You can't play that comparison game. You can't look at other people's stuff and be like,
stay in your own lane.
Stay in your own lane. Know who you are as a mom. Yes. And just live there and be okay with it and own it. You have something to add, Amy?
Well, Brittany, when you were talking about you don't like to be told what to do, I am a planner. Each kid has their own color. Family has a color. I am that way. I work that way. However, All three of my children do not work that way. And so I am a morning person. I want to get up, I want to get it done, but that's not how, especially my oldest, operates. And so she may still be doing math at 5 o'clock, knowing she can't go to swim practice without schoolwork being done. And she may be some in her room rushing to get it finished. And I've just had to let that go. So I think learning that flexibility within the family is okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think that's good. Just like learning about yourself and being true to yourself, learning about your kids and knowing how they are wired and how they tick is gonna. I mean, that's setting them up for success on for the years to come.
Well, and also, I'm kind of a research nerd sometimes. So, kids have different rhythms in sleep and their productivity. So in those teenage years, like this, my oldest hasn't always been that way. As she approaches teenage, she wants to sleep later. She, starts her school day later, except what I require that we do together. And that may change. And with homeschool, that's okay because she doesn't have to get up and be in a building learning at 8 a.m. when really she doesn't even start thinking well until 9:30 or 10. And really the best things that come out of her mouth, where I know she's processed stuff, are literally driving to swim practice at like 6 o'clock at night. Having that, it's like it's all been bouncing around in that brain, and she will say things, even if it's been a frustrating day, and I will look over at her and then literally look toward heaven and go, okay, it was frustrating, but you just showed me your glory in what you've done through her, the words that she has spoken, and not academically, or they could be, but tying it all together. Why are we doing this? And she can speak truth to, like Sam said, combining all these topics together, but then ultimately pointing it all back to the Father.
Okay, so thank you so much, Amy, for that. Our very last question says, I want to homeschool, but I don't really know the laws well, and I want to make sure that I'm being legal about it. And to answer that, I would just refer you back to our very first episode that says, now what? So Ashley really went through a lot of the legal side of things on that very first episode with some different resources. Quickly, you can look at HSLDA, which is the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. They actually have a map on their website where you can click in on your state because the laws vary from state to state. And so what is legal in our state may not be legal in your state. So just make sure that you're looking at your state and actually even in your own school district, the laws and regulations of how to submit your application to homeschool and that kind of stuff.
Thank you to all of our amazing friends that made up this panel, just some veteran homeschool moms who we have been learning from for a long time, and we were so excited to bring this so everybody could hear and learn from them. Cammie, will you close us out in prayer?
Sure. Lord God, thank you so much for each and every person that made up our panel tonight and all of the incredible wisdom that they shared with us. Lord, I pray for every person listening that is either considering homeschooling their children or is already homeschooling their children, that you would just make it apparent to them right now in their hearts, God, what you have for them this next school year. Lord, I pray that you would just confirm in each and every person the decisions that they're having to make. Lord, we're facing such difficult decisions right now in our current society. And God, I pray that you would just give the wisdom that you say in your word, that if we ask for wisdom, that you give generously to all. And Lord, we pray for wisdom for each and every person listening to be able to navigate this season for your glory, God. Thank you for the freedom that we have to homeschool in this country. Thank you for the grace that you give us that covers all of the things and all the mistakes and all the gaps, God. You come and fill all the gaps in our homeschools, and we are so grateful for that. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thanks again for joining us. We hope you were blessed and encouraged today. Check us out on social media at The Deeply Rooted Homeschool. We'll see you next time.